kind of dam bursting, particularly with the investor community, who are now being pressured by their investors, by their...
There are times in royal history that alter everything. Moments when the weight of silence finally cracks and the truth pours in like a torrent. It was one of those moments, inside the confines of Clarence House, during what was intended to be a calm and private meeting between King Charles and his two sons. Something quite unexpected occurred. The king, who had spent decades hiding behind royal formality and emotional reserve, now revealed what he had kept hidden for almost 25 years: Princess Diana's dying desire. According to a high-level insider close to the palace, it was a raw, emotional moment. William apparently froze. Harry became pale. Within minutes, both were in tears, not because of weakness, but because a lifetime of suppressed grief had finally been acknowledged. Because this was not just any confession. It was revealed that Diana, the lady whose life and death transformed the British monarchy, had left behind a personal message, not for herself, but for her sons, a plea that was disregarded, concealed, and maybe even silenced. What was Diana's last wish? Why did Charles delay so long before telling his sons? What does this signify for the crown's future, especially as popular support for the younger royals, particularly Kate and William, grows? The answers aren't just startling, they are catastrophic, and perhaps most hauntingly, they pose the question: what if the palace's actions after Diana's death have been based on the refusal of her final request? According to insiders, Charles made this emotional revelation during a rare face-to-face meeting with his boys, intended to resolve continuing tensions and communication breakdowns. The encounter, however, may have opened up fresh wounds rather than mending old ones, because what King Charles disclosed was more than just a private recollection. It marked a turning moment, one that repositions Diana as a guiding voice for the future, rather than a sad figure from the past. And now, the monarchy faces its most difficult reckoning. A lady who has been gone for more than 2 decades, but continues to outshine, outlove, and outlast every single one of them. What was the final wish? And why did it take so long to come to light? Our emotional expose will change your perspective on King Charles and Camilla. Princess Diana was surrounded by pandemonium during her dying hours. Cameras flashed as photographers chased her car through the Paris streets, the hum of motorcyclists mingling with the frantic gasps of a woman who had been sought for years, not only by the press, but by a system that was never designed to protect her. Despite the maelstrom that raged around her, people close to Diana believe she was more worried for her boys than herself. Even as the clock counted down to her death, Diana was thinking about legacy and the unspoken promise she hoped would affect the future. It was not a written will. It was not an official document embossed with royal seals. But Diana's dying desire, spoken to a close friend, and apparently written in a secret letter days before her death, might be the most profound legacy she ever left behind. In it, she talked of William and Harry, their relationship, their innocence, and her concern that the palace would turn them against one another. She had witnessed the cold machinery of the monarchy, and she understood better than anybody how power could split even the most loving of families. "Protect the boys from the palace," she allegedly urged during a late-night phone contact with a close friend. "And promise me they'll never forget who I truly was. Not the headlines, not the falsehoods, the truth." According to many palace sources, Diana's ultimate request was simple. Her sons should grow up grounded, loved, and together, that they be granted the freedom that she was denied. Above all, no one, Camilla, Charles, or the monarchy, should be able to remove her place in their hearts. It wasn't about vengeance. It was about memories, about love, about the emotional legacy that royal titles and etiquette could never match. Rumors circulated in the years that followed, whispers of a sealed envelope, a locked drawer in Kensington Palace, or a tape provided to her butler, Paul Burrell. Some rejected them as tabloid fantasies. Others claimed they were purposely suppressed, buried by people who dreaded Diana's voice from beyond the dead. Then came the night that altered everything. William and Harry, now adult men fashioned by loss and isolation, were summoned to Clarence's house for a private audience with their father. It was intended to be an olive branch, an attempt to find some form of healing, but instead, they received a confession. King Charles, fatigued and apparently in tears, acknowledged that Diana had left behind a final desire, which he had kept hidden all these years, one he had neglected to honor. The effect was immediate. William, often seen as the calm future king, was noticeably shaken. Harry, already stung by his public alienation from his family, allegedly stormed out of the meeting. The discovery did more than simply sting. It reopened an emotional scar that they had both been forced to keep hidden for far too long. Why had this taken so long? Why had their mother's final desire, a call for togetherness, protection, and remembering, been ignored? Worse, why was it hushed by the guy who had vowed, however silently, to protect them? This unwritten commitment, this emotional will left by a lady who died far too young, now hangs heavily over the monarchy. Because the issue is no longer only Charles's guilt or Camilla's anguish. It is about the reckoning that occurs when the truth, no matter how deeply hidden, is ultimately revealed. Diana may be gone, but her voice, soft, strong, and heartbreakingly clear, resounds louder than ever, and her dying desire, previously suppressed, is now influencing the destiny of the very institution that once attempted to forget her. For years, King Charles has worn the mask of duty. In public, he seemed stern, restrained, and even icy, a guy more concerned with tradition than affection. But behind palace doors, another truth lingered: guilt, heavy, crushing remorse that no crown could quell. Perhaps the most significant cause of his shame was his silence, which lasted more than 2 decades, on Princess Diana's ultimate desire. Many people assumed that Charles was unconcerned with Diana's legacy, preferring to move on with Camilla and forget the past. But, according to palace insiders, the truth is considerably more complicated and far more devastating. Charles did not remain mute because he did not care. He remained mute because he was terrified, afraid of what that final request would imply for his marriage, his reputation, and the future he had painstakingly planned around Camilla. Diana's request, as stated, was simple and heartbreaking. She wanted her sons to remain together. She feared that palace intrigues, media manipulation, and future royal weddings would separate them. More crucially, she allegedly requested that Charles never allow anybody, including Camilla, to rewrite her tale or diminish her importance in the lives of William and Harry. In other words, Diana knew what was about to happen, and she attempted to stop it from beyond the grave. For Charles, this request created an insurmountable issue. To commemorate it, Diana would be permanently elevated above Camilla in the royal hierarchy, not merely in public perception, but also inside the family. It would entail informing Camilla, the woman he battled so hard to marry, that she would always be in Diana's shadow. It would imply boosting Kate, who so obviously embodies Diana's sensitivity and grace, while perhaps alienating the queen consort he spent decades legitimizing. Camilla's power within the palace has only risen since her marriage to Charles. According to sources, she was adamant about keeping Diana's final desires a secret. "It's the past," she reportedly told an aide. "We must look forward." But Charles knew the reality was not going away. And as Charles grew older, his boys grew apart, and public sympathy turned further toward Diana's memory and Kate's blossoming popularity. His guilt became greater. It wasn't simply about personal guilt. It was the shame of a father watching his sons suffer, one fleeing the nation, while the other suffered in silence under the weight of royal expectations. Charles had failed to protect them, just like Diana had feared. So why talk now? Some argue that Charles, facing serious health worries and mounting pressure to unify the monarchy, saw this as his final opportunity at redemption. Others claim William addressed him immediately and demanded explanations. Whatever the cause, one thing is certain: the dam has finally cracked. And in the torrent of tears and confessions, Charles is exposed, not just as a monarch, but also as a father who disregarded his children's mother's deathbed wishes. And that silence, no matter how loudly he tries to justify it, may never be forgiven. Prince William has long walked a fine line between heir to the throne, loyal husband, and heartbroken son. In public, he is the epitome of regal poise, calm, controlled, dutiful. Behind palace gates, those closest to him claim that when King Charles finally conveyed Princess Diana's ultimate desire, something in William broke. Because for the first time, the man who had spent his whole life defending the monarchy realized how profoundly the institution had violated the one person he loved the most, his mother. According to family sources, the atmosphere inside Clarence House that day was extremely overwhelming. Charles's voice trembled as he admitted to his boys that Diana's final request, for her sons to be united and her legacy to be safeguarded, had been kept hidden and unacknowledged. William, who was normally stoic in the face of a catastrophe, sat transfixed in silence, not out of astonishment, but out of barely restrained rage. He'd spent his entire life trying to do right by both of his parents. He respected his father's status, but he spent every day in Diana's shadow, which he enjoyed. Kate, too, had become a continuation of Diana's legacy, compassionate, poised, and passionately protective of her children. And now, with Charles admitting that he had disobeyed Diana's wish, William was confronted with the harsh reality. The quiet was more than simply carelessness. It was a decision to silence Diana's voice in order to exalt someone else's. Camilla is someone who, in William's opinion, did not deserve the crown she currently wears. Insiders said William's initial response was one of astonishment. "How could you not have told us?" he allegedly inquired. "How could you allow her voice to be erased?" And beneath that query was a deeper hurt. The pain of a boy who had witnessed his mother's suffering at the hands of both the press and the palace. A youngster made a silent promise at her death to keep her memory alive. And now, as a man and future king, he recognized that the most powerful person who might have assisted him in doing this, his own father, had failed him. The timing of William's mourning adds an extra element of anguish. This disclosure occurred at a time when the public already saw him and Kate as the royal family's moral center. Their popularity had skyrocketed, particularly following the Sussexes' departure and Charles' problematic choices as king. William was now tasked with not just carrying the monarchy forward, but also with atoning for previous transgressions. In private, some feel this disclosure will have long-term ramifications. William's faith in his father has apparently been shaken. While he may never express it openly, the animosity is profound. And to make matters worse, it did not have to be this way. If Charles had followed Diana's wishes from the start, telling his boys the truth rather than merely titles, William and Harry's connection would not have been severed. Instead, William is confronted with a harsh paradox. In order to achieve Diana's goal, he must overcome his own rage. He must be the mediator, the symbol of togetherness, even as his faith in those closest to him erodes. But if William received anything from Diana, it was the ability to remain strong in the face of treachery. Perhaps this is why, despite his anguish, William did not shout. He did not storm out. He just rose up, collected himself, and left the room, not as a son, but as a future king, one who wears not just the crown, but also the weight of a mother's last hope. Prince Harry was not surprised by the discovery. It came as a heartbreaking, soul-crushing confirmation of what he had long thought, but had never been permitted to express publicly. For years, Harry was derided as the rebellious one, the emotional one, the royal who abandoned it all. But when King Charles eventually acknowledged that Princess Diana had left a final desire, which he had buried, Harry fell. Not physically, but emotionally, quietly, fatally. To the outside world, Harry is a man who abandoned the crushing hold of royalty in search of freedom and family in California. Those who know Harry, however, believe he has never fled the monarchy. He fled away from the quiet, the cold institutional apathy that killed his mother and, in many ways, attempted to obliterate her thereafter. Diana's memory was not just holy to him. It was his driving force, And now Charles had admitted to keeping her last desire a secret, a desire that may have changed everything. Insiders said Harry sat astonished once Charles finished speaking, his eyes filled with tears, but not from surprise. He'd always known. Diana reportedly told friends that of her two kids, Harry was the one who felt more deeply. He was the one she worried would be harmed the most. And now those concerns have been realized. Harry's reaction was visceral. Unlike William, who maintained his cool with clenched fists and royal resolve, Harry allegedly rose up, left the room, and did not return. According to insiders close to the Sussex camp, he characterized the situation as suffocating and subsequently told Meghan she asked him to protect us, but he didn't. Not once. This wasn't only about Charles. It was about the whole system. Harry's years of being told that his mother's legacy was being respected, that her memory was protected, suddenly seemed like a cruel joke. Perhaps most difficult of all was realizing that William, who stayed and persevered, had been kept in the dark, just like him. After all that time apart, all those heated interviews and crushing headlines, both brothers had been betrayed. Meghan's reaction, too, has generated speculation in royal circles. While some claim she consoled Harry, others believe she regarded this as vindication, a moment that validated every decision they had taken. "They tried to silence us," she allegedly told a friend, "but they couldn't silence her." And now, Harry wonders what happens next. Will he return? Does he forgive? Or has this disclosure exacerbated the divide? According to those close to Harry, this might be his final break. While he still loves his brother and mourns for what may have been, he recognizes the institution for what it is, a fortress rather than a family, one that would sooner save its reputation than fulfill the last requests of the lady it failed to protect. Diana was never part of Harry's royal history. She is the reason he became who he is, why he went away, and why he battles for the truth. And now that this truth has been revealed, he bears not just her memories, but also her unfinished struggle. He may no longer fight from within the palace, but he will continue to fight no matter where he goes. When Camilla Parker Bowles married Charles in 2005, the royal PR machine worked tirelessly to repair her reputation. The audience was taught that she was Charles's genuine love, a misunderstood lady caught up in history's crossfire. It eventually worked, although slowly and unwillingly. She transitioned from other woman to queen consort, but it was all based on one weak assumption: Diana's voice had finally been hushed. And now, with King Charles disclosing her ultimate desire and admitting that it had been neglected for decades, that illusion has crumbled. According to sources inside the palace, Camilla was enraged when she learnt of Charles's confession to William and Harry, not only because of what he said, but also because of its significance. Diana was back, not in form, but in soul. Once again, the press, the public, and even the royal family were discussing her. Not Camilla, not the queen consort, but the lady she'd spent her life attempting to overthrow. Camilla found the discovery not just uncomfortable, but also existential. Her entire royal career had been fashioned by a carefully crafted narrative. She had won Charles's love, time had healed all wounds, and the public had moved on from Diana. But it only took one fact, one last request expressed from beyond the dead, to ruin everything. Insiders said Camilla begged Charles not to tell the lads. "It will destroy everything we've built," she reportedly said. However, after years of shame and probably fearing his own mortality, the king made the decision. Some feel that was the ultimate act of atonement. Others believe it was a moment of weakness. Camilla felt betrayed. What about the public? They did not hesitate. The momentum swung the minute Diana's ultimate request was revealed, when people learned that she had prayed for her kids to remain intact and her legacy to go on. Social media erupted with tweets stating, "Diana was right all along," and "Camilla will never be our queen." Old footage of Diana reappeared. Her interviews, emotions, and cautions were more pertinent than ever. Kate Middleton, who has been likened to Diana for her elegance and rapport with the public, saw her popularity ratings rise yet again. To many, she is now the living embodiment of Diana's soul. Everything the monarchy could have been if it had listened. And the contrast between Kate's unforced kindness and Camilla's deliberate rise became difficult to ignore. Camilla had always dreaded this day. She realized she couldn't erase Diana's memories. She could only survive it. But now, even that seemed unattainable. Diana's legacy transcends time. It does not fade. When it speaks, especially via her sons, the world listens. Inside the palace, the dynamic has changed. Camilla, once empowered by her crown, now finds herself isolated. William allegedly makes their conversations brief and professional. Harry will not talk with her at all. And Charles, while still devoted, is reported to be emotionally distant, burdened by what he has unleashed. For a woman who battled her way to the top of the monarchy, this is the worst nightmare. Not a scandal. Do not push. But irrelevant. Diana's shadow has returned, this time via the truth rather than headlines. Camilla spent her entire life hiding this reality, and now, no matter how many titles she holds or how many palaces she visits, she will always be in the presence of a ghost she cannot escape. In a monarchy based on quiet, Princess Diana's voice refuses to fade. Even in death, she is the beating heart of a royal family that can't shake her influence. King Charles may have finally spoken her truth, but in doing so, he rekindled a flame that decades of royal propaganda could never put out. Diana's final desire was so simple and pure: love, unity, and remembering. For years, however, it was buried behind ambition, fear, and protocol. And now that it has emerged, everything has changed. William and Harry, ripped apart by distance and decisions, were briefly reunited by the mother they both cherished. They mourned not just for her, but for all that had been taken away from them: the truth, the peace, and the hope of a unified future. Her request had been rejected by the guy who had vowed to honor it, and the emotional impact would be difficult to forget. For Charles, the confession may have been a last chance at atonement, but Camilla faced a reckoning. Diana's presence, which was once supposed to be receding into the background of royal history, has returned stronger than ever. Her legacy lives on today through her boys, Kate, and the hearts of millions who never stopped loving her. This wasn't just an epiphany, it was a reminder. A reminder that crowns can be polished and titles awarded, but genuine monarchy is remembered by how they made others feel. Diana made the world feel seen. She made her kids feel cherished. Even as the palace attempted to move on, she remained the one figure they could never replace. Now that her dying request has been expressed out, the world has heard her one final time, and it did listen. Diana's tale never ended. It was simply waiting for the moment when truth could finally speak louder than silence. That moment has arrived. The royal family may never be the same again,